Hayley Williams album, the solo album that's dropping. We talked about After Laughter in 2017. I believe you actually had it on your top 10 list, if I'm
Oh,
not
I don't
remembering.
remember, but I remember I really liked Hard Times. I thought that song
Yes.
banged.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah,
go
I'm
back
not
to
sure.
Fake Happy a lot.
Yeah,
Honestly, the album's great. And I think what it did in terms of Paramore, which is this like 2000s band that really caught like the end of like the like emo angsty
it
high school
was a pop punk
like
band.
phase. Yeah, pop punk and but like I feel like they brought more of that like popness to it. Instead like it's funny because I think about Evanescence a lot when I think about early Paramore, only because they were like similar in terms of like a female lead and like really caught that popular sound, even though they weren't totally pop. But Paramore really shifted more into that 80s nostalgic vibe on After Laughter.
Yeah,
But it's been
new
three
wave
years.
synths.
Yeah, they're not really dropping new music right now, and Hayley seems to be focusing more on herself. And that brings us to Petals for Armor, her new album that dropped. And I kind of left this album of two minds. I think one, it's a little too much fat on this. I think it could have been cut down a bit, been a little bit more concise, and I felt like certain themes of it were played out in not the most interesting way by the end. So I was a little bit. I found myself
Hmm.
zoning out a little bit near
15
the end,
tracks. That's a lot.
but I was a little bit. I was a little bit intrigued and impressed by Hayley's like direction that she's taking this, like the strength that I think comes through in her songwriting. And I think a couple of these songs really pop, and of course, if you can get a Boy Genius backing vocal on one of the tracks, you take it. So there's some stuff to like on here. Where were you left after finishing Petals for Armor?
Yeah, it is kind of funny to hear that post After Laughter, which in itself was a Paramore heel turn, we're then getting the first Hayley solo album, which is kind of funny because Hayley was always signed as a solo act. Then she made the
Mm,
band, you know. But hearing another heel turn, right? Like
right.
Petals for Armor is, I mean, what kind of genre would you put this in? Like it's like singer songwriter music, but it does kind of hop around a lot. And
Yeah.
to I think the highlight, the key is the songwriting, and frankly the vulnerability, the frankness that
Mm,
songwriting gives you. Because Paramore, by being a pop punk band and kind of having that energy, you listen to their lyrics, they were ultimately a very sanitized, almost Christianized band, and that might have been part of the friction that bubbled up with the band and people leaving and rejoining and all that. And hearing Hayley, I think, really just kind of like let it all out and express herself without holding back at all was really refreshing to me. Uh, but it still kind of jumps around a lot, like with the
yeah.
sound. Like you're getting all these good themes, like just kind of more open femininity and anxiety and reconciling with her divorce from the newfound glory guy, and then you have like the what cinnamon sounds like, and then you have like why you creeping around here. Like it does jump around all over the place,
Yeah.
you know. So
Well, yeah, it's funny because I think at the end one of the songs that caught me because it really was so like poppy was Sugar on the Rim, and I was like, oh wow, this song is so like just like catchy and like you kind of like smack it around in your mouth a little bit. But then the song I probably liked the most from the album is the first track, Simmer, which is
mm,
just her like scathing and like her vocal performance and her emotional performance in that track is just so like exactly the title. It's like simmering underneath, like something's about to explode, but she's kind of holding it all in. And um, just like there's such a range on this album, like you kind of mentioned. It's fascinating to kind of see what's coming out. And I agree, the vulnerability on this, especially because she talks about having suicidal thoughts, having abusive parents growing up, going through, or I guess living in an abusive household. Seems like her mom was
mm,
in a domestic violence situation. It seems like her divorce, so you mentioned, was a major player into this as well. So there's a lot of, I mean, she's very exposed on this, which I give her a ton of credit for, and it seems like she had a lot to pull from, um, life wise. You mentioned Cinnamon. That's one of the songs that stood out to me. Any others that you really liked or that you thought
mm.
we're
Yeah, I
talking about?
thought I thought creeping that the hook is just catchy, but sudden desire jumped out to me.
Hmm.
Um, I like the way she builds to that chorus, but again, lyrically, talking about female lust in the open, not something we were going to get from Paramore proper. So that again, that's just kind of cool. I like Dead Horse. I like Crystal Clear. Uh, Simmer, as you said, is good. Cinnamon. Um, it is cool to hear the Boy Genius backing vocals on
Yeah.
Roses, Lotus, Violet, Iris.
Yep.
Did not recognize those when I heard them. Read about that after the fact, but yeah, that's cool. And definitely in terms of like overqualified background vocals, kind of shows the clout Hayley has as a
Yeah.
Atlantic Records artist. But she's only 31, but she's been
Well,
in everyone's lives since she was like
forever.
15.
Yeah.
So honestly, really impressive. And she has talked about Paramore's gearing up for a new album, might get back to the roots a little bit. So that would be in turn another heel turn for what the music she's giving us. But yeah, it's pretty cool, honestly.
I'm trying to think of who her peers are. Like the only person that kind of comes to mind, especially after this album, is like Miley. Kind of
Mm,
for me. Especially because Miley really moved out of that like pop, young Hannah Montana lane. Really did a heel turn. Now it's kind of gone back to a more traditional like singer
right.
songwriter type realm.
There's
Um,
been some anecdotes about when she befriended Taylor Swift way back in the day. Her and Taylor were kind of on equal footing in terms of like where they were in their respective scenes, and it's kind of funny to see. Obviously, Taylor Swift far surpass Haley in
yeah.
terms of star power, but yeah, like there's not a lot of like female rock or pop rock figures from the aughts that are still kind of active in a major way today.
Hmm.
Like, would like Pink count? Like, I don't
Yeah, I
know.
guess maybe, but Pink, I almost put it in like a generation before her in some
Yeah,
sense. I'm trying
older.
to like, the interesting thing about it is like Paramore had such a hiatus, then came back, and then now Haley's dropping the solo album. It almost feels a bit like Stevie Nicks in a way,
Hmm.
but obviously the music is not comparable. Um, in terms of quality, I would say Paramore I would never put on the same playing field as Fleetwood, but also I think in terms of like career arc, Stevie Nicks was I think a little bit older when she started making her solo albums.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ugh. I don't know. It's hard. I can't really think of a comparison, but definitely excited to see what Hayley does next. She's
Mm-hmm.
talent.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about her collaborating with Boy Genius, even in an abbreviated way, because Boy Genius represents this kind of revival of female rockers that's been happening the past few years. We talked about Soccer Mommy earlier this year. There's really a lot of them now. But Hayley, represents that generation beforehand, even if she's only like, 5, 6 years older than some of these people.
Yeah.
But she's just so much more experienced and been around so much longer. So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Does
I'll
Avril
be
Lavigne count?
well, I mean, Avril Lavigne. When was the last time we heard anything from her? And there's a huge conspiracy that Avril Lavigne is not actually Avril Lavigne.
That's
So,
right.
uh, definitely go read that on Reddit if you want a fun conspiracy, unlike all the other Reddit conspiracies out there right now. Haley really captures this idea of like strong femininity through her vulnerability on that album.